PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. Just by saying their name, a lot of people will have an opinion. Founded in 1980, they're the largest animal rights organization on the planet, and are credited with being at the forefront of wiping out the fur industry, closing the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey circuses, and ending the use of animals in automobile crash tests. Yeah, I couldn't believe that one was real either. I think we can all pretty much agree that what they stand for is important. But for every success that PETA boasts, there is a controversy, to say the least. PETA constantly finds themselves at the receiving end of accusations, such as comparing meat eaters to Nazis, exploiting women, or even kidnapping pets just to kill them. But can we trust these accusations? With so much propaganda and misinformation out there, and with industries to protect, how do we know what to believe? Are people misrepresenting things PETA has done for the sake of profit? Or does PETA actually deserve the bad press? I've built a list of every criticism of PETA that I could find, and in this series of videos, we're going to look at every single one of them in depth from both sides of the argument. I want to find the unbiased truth. In this video, we're going to talk about the claim that PETA kills animals, whether that's true, and whether there's any justification for it. I will say that I was so shocked by what I learned in my research, and I'm sure you will be too. Some of you will know that I'm vegan, but don't let that dissuade you. PETA is controversial in vegan circles too, and I take pride in my ability not to let bias get in the way of presenting the truth. Now hit that like button for 10 years of good luck, and let's get into it. It is well known that PETA doesn't exactly agree with the idea of owning pets. In fact, they state this publicly on their website. We believe that it would have been in the animal's best interests if the institution of pet keeping, i.e. breeding animals to be kept and regarded as pets, never existed. It's a controversial stance, but I think a lot of us can agree with the logic behind it. Generally, people care a lot about cats and dogs, so why would we pay for puppy mills and similar facilities to exist?
And you have to look out for animal rights groups
when there are so many animals already waiting for homes in overflowing shelters and on the streets. PETA claims that they are worried about irresponsible pet ownership. We're talking about people who chain up their dogs outside, declaw their cats, and yell at their pets for sitting on furniture. They advocate for neutering and spaying, and advise people to adopt these animals from pounds or shelters. And according to the same website, PETA does not want to confiscate animals who are well cared for. But can we believe this? PETA is often accused of stealing people's pets and putting them down. But in my digging, I only found one example of this taking place, and according to PETA, it was accidental.
The story of an alleged kidnapping of a dog right off a family's porch in Accomack County has spread like wildfire.
PETA will be facing a lawsuit over the death of a dog taken from the Eastern Shore. Tiny Chihuahua dog napped and euthanized by PETA.
Maya was taken by PETA last month and never returned.
The story goes like this. In 2014, PETA was sued for $9.7 million for trespassing onto a family's porch, stealing their pet Chihuahua, and euthanizing her. According to PETAKillsAnimals.com, a website exposing the dark side of PETA, they had been asked to remove stray dogs from a trailer park who had been left behind by previous tenants. Mr. Zarate, the caregiver for Maya, had gone out shopping when PETA arrived to collect the stray animals. Maya had been sitting on Mr. Zarate's porch when PETA employees found her. Initially, seemingly to avoid trespassing, the employees paid local children to lure the dog from the porch, but the children failed, so the employees themselves trespassed onto the property and removed the dog. Later, when Mr. Zarate arrived home, Maya was nowhere to be seen. He called PETA that same day, but there was no answer. They waited until the next day, when his niece made the call. This time, PETA picked up. At first, the PETA representative denied taking any dogs at all. That is until the niece revealed that they had seen the employees taking their dog on CCTV. At that point, the PETA representative abruptly hung up. This is the CCTV footage, which clearly shows a van pull up. Maya curiously gets closer to see who the people are before scuttering away. That's when one employee enters onto the property and returns with the dog in her arms. Maya is then placed in the back of the van, the doors are closed, and they drive away. 2 days after the phone call, the same employees that had abducted the dog returned with a fruit basket and the news that Maya had been euthanized. This was particularly unexpected because the law requires a 5-day waiting period before euthanasia can take place. Of course, the outcry is understandable. A companion animal, which many people see as part of the family, was unjustly killed, seemingly for the simple reason that PETA doesn't agree with pet ownership. But in their own words, PETA does not want to confiscate animals who are well cared for. So, was this story presented in bad faith? And is PETA actually in the wrong? Well, according to PETA's attorney, things are a little bit different. A farmer adjacent to the trailer park had complained to PETA about the abandoned and stray dogs that had attacked his animals, injured his cow, killed his goat, and terrorized his rabbits. Trailer park management encouraged PETA to gather the strays, adding that no dogs are allowed to run free in the trailer park. On the day in question, PETA associates arrived and gathered up as many abandoned and stray dogs and cats as they could. Among the animals was Maya, the Chihuahua. Supposedly, Maya wasn't wearing a collar, had no license, and no rabies tag, nothing that indicated that the dog wasn't a stray. Additionally, Mr. Zarate's other 2 dogs were tethered, while Maya was not, and nobody questioned or challenged the PETA associates. With the evidence that is available to the Commonwealth, it is just as likely that the 2 women believed they were gathering abandoned and/or stray animals rather than stealing property of another. Indeed, it is more probable under this evidence that the 2 women associated with PETA that day believed that they were gathering animals that posed health and/or livestock threat in the trailer park and adjacent community. Without evidence supporting the requisite criminal intent, no criminal prosecution can occur. If PETA's attorney is to be believed, it is not fair that PETA representatives be held accountable for taking the dog.
I sympathize with them, but I'm not able to make a decision based on what's politically expedient to me or to certain citizens. I've got to make the right legal decision. An analysis is a decision of legalities, not a decision of politics. And so the decision that I made, I'm confident with, that here there wasn't any criminal intent that was shown beyond a reasonable doubt.
What would you say to people who say that you made this decision because you were intimidated by PETA's high-powered attorneys?
No, I don't think so. As a matter of fact, PETA was actually very cooperative when we wanted to further our investigation. And that's how we obtained the names of the 2 ladies, by PETA's cooperation.
The case was settled at $50,000. But one thing remains unanswered. Why was PETA, a self-proclaimed animal rights organization, going out and euthanizing animals? According to PETAKillsAnimals.com, PETA euthanizes on average 83.5% of dogs and cats that they receive. In 2006, this was as high as 97.4%. During that year, PETA was only able to find a home for 12 of the over 3,000 cats and dogs. In comparison, the average euthanasia rate for humane societies in Virginia was 34.7%. PETA's euthanasia rate is so shockingly high that in 2008, the Center for Consumer Freedom formally petitioned Virginia's Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services to reclassify PETA as a slaughterhouse. On the surface, that's reasonable. These statistics are outrageous. Most people would expect an animal rights organization to run a no-kill shelter, since that's a far more ethical way to treat unwanted animals. Well, not according to PETA.
No-kill facilities keep their save rates high easily by saying no to people who wish to turn animals in, by imposing entry fees that many people can't or won't pay, and by creating impossibly long waiting lists. Because of the sheer number of animals needing admission to shelters on any given day, no-kill facilities become full almost the moment they open their doors. This leads to often dangerously overcrowded conditions, meaning dogfights, intimidation of old and small dogs, and disease outbreaks. Government records show dogs and cats in no-kill shelters die in their cages, something that should almost never happen if anyone is being vigilant about care. But that's apparently okay, because dying isn't a killing, is it? Using the term no-kill, many unscrupulous profiteers are collecting funds by demonizing open admission shelters, calling them kill shelters, even when no-kill outfits refer people to them.
But the city shelter, that's what they're for, is to take anything.
It's time we turned back the clock on no-kill, the worst, most insane, most damaging and cruel idea to invade sheltering. We do need to reduce or end euthanasia of healthy animals, but this cockamamie idea isn't how that will happen. Wishful thinking cannot solve the overpopulation crisis, and we need to be strong enough to accept that a peaceful release is what we can and must do for animals who have no decent home to go to, or who are too old, tired, abused, sick, or injured, and who should not be shunted around like inanimate objects.
According to PETA's website, euthanasia is not a solution to overpopulation, but rather a heartbreaking necessity. While others may say that PETA operates a high-kill shelter, PETA calls itself a shelter of last resort, where animals who have no place to turn or who are unwanted or suffering are welcomed. They go on to say that they never turn their backs on neglected, unloved or homeless animals, even if the best they can offer them is a painless release. They also don't charge the owners or guardians for any of this. But why is there such a high kill percentage? You would think that a fair amount of animals are adoptable, and surely a huge organisation like PETA could afford to house them while they look for homes. Well, PETA claims that the majority of adoptable dogs are never brought through their doors. Instead, they refer them to local adoption groups and walk-in animal shelters. They finish by saying that as long as companion animals are still deliberately bred, and people aren't spaying and neutering their dogs and cats, open admission animal shelters and organisations like PETA must do society's dirty work. Their explanation seems reasonable, but of course any organisation would talk about itself in a favourable manner. So then, why doesn't a website like PETAkillsanimals.com not even mention this reasoning, even if to debunk it? In this section titled PETA's Lame Defence, where I would expect to find something like this, they just mention that PETA claims it does not run a traditional animal shelter, and that it puts down animals that are too sick or injured to carry on. They're seemingly saying this to imply that PETA is lying, but as far as we've seen, this is more or less accurate. Although PETA themselves also say that they are willing to euthanize elderly, dying, aggressive, or otherwise unadoptable animals. So why would PETAkillsanimals.com omit this? The website goes on to talk about a 2007 case where 2 PETA employees were tried for animal cruelty and littering after dumping dead cats and dogs in a dumpster. Supposedly, witnesses at the trial testified that PETA told them that they shouldn't have a problem at all finding homes for the dogs left in their care. Other North Carolina shelter personnel testified that they were under the impression that PETA would find homes for the animals they handed over. PETA Kills Animals finishes by saying that PETA has never backed up its claim with any evidence to suggest that it only takes in injured or otherwise unadoptable dogs and cats. But PETA doesn't claim this. Again, on PETA's own website, they claim to euthanize elderly, sick, injured, dying, aggressive, or otherwise unadoptable animals. So why is PETAkillsanimals.com not including all the facts? Anyone can see that they're relevant. And why do they not link any sources for this court case, when they did include news sources for the Chihuahua incident? Perhaps it's because they were found not guilty, and all I needed to do was type 5 words into Google to find that out. In this case, prosecutors failed to prove malice, although the PETA employees did receive a littering charge. So far, everything that PETAkillsanimals.com has claimed has been misrepresented. So what is their motivation? The answer to that is the biggest twist of all. Before we go any further, I'd like to point out that killing animals isn't the only thing that makes PETA controversial. They might also be damaging the feminist movement. They target young children with their messaging, and they think it's acceptable to compare meat eaters to Nazis and farming animals to the Holocaust. If you don't want to miss future videos on these, you should make sure that you're subscribed. And if you are, ensure that you have notifications turned on so you don't miss them. Now let's get back to the video. So, who runs PETAKillsAnimals.com? According to their contact section, they are run by the Center of Consumer Freedom, a name that we've actually heard before. They're the organization who petitioned Virginia's Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services to reclassify PETA as a slaughterhouse. That's interesting, right? They describe themselves as a non-profit organization dedicated to protecting the full range of choices that American consumers currently enjoy. In addition to malicious animal rights activists, we stand up to the food police, environmental scaremongers, neo-prohibitionists, meddling bureaucrats, and other self-anointed saints who claim to know what's best for you. But, as I said earlier, any organization would talk about itself in a favorable manner. So here's what I managed to dig up. The Center for Consumer Freedom, now called the Center of Organizational Research and Education, is an American non-profit that describes itself as dedicated to protecting consumer choices and promoting common sense. Aside from PETA, the organization has been critical of organizations including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Center for Science in the Public Interest, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. But the Center for Organizational Research and Education, or CORE as I'm going to call it from now on, isn't exempt from criticism itself. CORE was originally founded as the Guest Choice Network, which found its initial funding from the Philip Morris Tobacco Company to fight smoking limitations in restaurants. We can actually confirm this via leaked communications, such as this initial solicitation for $600,000, in which Richard Berman, the founder of CORE, or Guest Choice, talks about campaigning to defend customers and marketing programs from so-called attacks on anti-smoking, anti-drinking, and anti-meat activists. This responding letter confirms the $600,000 pledge. And in this follow-up leaked fax, Berman talks about how their original campaign, the Accommodation Program, was being perceived as a pro-smoking program, because it was, but they didn't want that to be transparent. Berman continues that the name Guest Choice can be established as a program but positioned as a consumer philosophy. The organization has grown a lot since then and now receives funding from further tobacco-related companies such as Davidoff and Altria. Aside from campaigning for so-called smokers' rights, they also receive funding from Alliance Gaming and Haraz to protect gambling. Companies like Coca-Cola and Wendy's are also donors, which might explain why they aggressively downplay the American obesity epidemic with their website, obesitymyths.com. Alcohol producers like Anheuser-Busch also provide funding, which might be why CORE run a Drink Responsibly, Drive Responsibly campaign. This is literally their own website. They actively defend drinking and driving. Just quickly, I want to show you a quote from this page. Some anti-alcohol activists are seeking increasingly harsh restrictions on social drinkers. This can be evidenced in many ways. Increased use of roadblocks, the push for wider use of ignition interlock devices, and ever lower blood alcohol content arrest thresholds. But the most insidious tactic to come out of the neo-prohibitionist camp is the transition from the common sense "don't drive drunk" message to the similar sounding but entirely different "don't drink and drive" slogan. Berman has even argued against Mothers Against Drunk Driving, which began as a response to a drunk driver killing the founder's daughter. But let's get back to PETA and PETAKillsAnimals.com. In 2002, spokesman John Doyle publicly listed CORE's enemies as just about every consumer and environmental group, chef, legislator, or doctor who raises objections to things like pesticide use, genetic engineering of crops, or antibiotic use in beef and poultry. Now, I looked into some of the companies that fund CORE to see who might be responsible for funding the attack against veganism and animal rights. These are the ones I was able to find. And if you think that's a lot, remember that CORE is technically a non-profit, which means that they don't have to disclose any of their donors. Berman even acknowledges this at his talk to the Western Energy Alliance, which was recorded and leaked to the New York Times.
We run all of this stuff through nonprofit organizations that are insulated from having to disclose donors. There's total anonymity. People don't know who supports us. We've been doing this for 20-something years in this regard. And to the degree that anybody is concerned about that, I will tell you that there's all sorts of ways, all sorts of firewalls that have been established to get this done on an anonymous basis.
So who knows how many donors there are, and how much money there actually is? Interestingly, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, which is a watchdog group, alleged that Berman funneled nearly $2 million from CORE from 1999 to 2004. That was 17 years ago, so who knows how much higher that number really is. So, can we trust CORE? And can we trust PETAkillsanimals.com? I'm not going to tell you what to think, but I will say I've given you everything I can get my hands on. I didn't come into this to make PETA look like a good guy. I wanted to investigate honestly and unbiased. I wasn't expecting to find myself at the bottom of this rabbit hole. So what do you think? Are the constant accusations that PETA kills animals fair? Are they misleading? Or are they justified? Let me know in the comments below. Before I go, I would love to give a huge thank you to my patrons. Ekaterina Maranova, Ryan Kleincourt, Matthew D, Sleeps8, Ash Q, Kathy Lawrence, Con3, and Mag Henderson. If you would like to join that list, you can do so for as little as £1 a month, and you get some really cool perks with that too. And if you want to see this channel grow, I implore you to share this video anywhere you can. It could be your social media, it could be Reddit, it could be on a YouTube community post. Every little interaction that this video gets pushes this channel that little bit further. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you later. Thanks for watching.